Hey everybody, Danielle Hargenrader here, and welcome to another episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Today, I'm very excited to bring you a new guest, and I'm going to read his super awesome bio. It's going to take me a minute because he has a lot of accomplishments, and then we're going to get right into the good stuff. So, Rodney Miller is 32 years old and has been married to his wife, Suzanne, since 2007. They have a daughter named Kiera. Am I saying that right? Yes? Okay, Kiera, who is 7 years old, and they also have two Great Danes named Fergus and Eisen. Rodney was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1987 at 4 years of age and grew up on a cattle ranch in southern Oklahoma. He is currently an admin for the Type 1 Diabetic Athletes Facebook group, competes in powerlifting and strongman, and has recently started using strongman demonstrations as a way to portray type 1 diabetics in a positive light. Since beginning his journey to bring awareness to type 1 diabetes, Rodney has been featured on KMID Channel 2 News deadlifting a car to raise money and awareness, and spoken at Health South Regional Hospital. He was a part of the film Type 1 Day 1, has been featured on the website Beyond Type 1, and provided an educational booth at several local ADA events, including a strongman demonstration at the 2015 ADA Step Out Walk in Midland, Texas. Rodney has been a guest on the Diabetes Power Show and provides coaching and nutrition programs for non-diabetics and diabetics alike. Some of his competitive accomplishments include third place at the Ronnie Coleman Classic Strongman in 2015, first place at the USPA Ross Shreves Classic Powerlifting Meet in 2014, among many others. In June 2016, Rodney plans to host the first ever Bolus and Barbells event in Austin, Texas, which I love that name. Hi, Rodney. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah. So that is quite an impressive bio, and I want to hear all about your journey from diagnosis to being an amazing diabetic strongman athlete. So tell us about your story of diagnosis and the road you traveled to get from there to here.
Yeah, a little bit here. So was diagnosed when I was 4, and it was I would say a pretty normal diagnosis. I was drinking like 3 liters of soda a day. Parents said, oh, there's something wrong with him. And so they rushed me to the hospital. Blood sugar was 880. Remember that. And then I actually kind of fell into a little bit of a coma for 2 weeks. Was non-responsive. And I ended up coming out of it and being, I would say, mostly normal. I would think some people might argue that I'm a little odd. And so we kind of started from there. And my parents were pretty, country people. We grew up in southern Oklahoma. We were ranchers. And so we just kind of addressed it in that same kind of workman type fashion in here's what we have to do. And these are the drugs we have to take. These are the numbers we have to try to hit. And, we probably didn't eat the best. As a Southern family, there was a lot of chicken fried steak and biscuits and white bread that as I got older, I realized was probably not doing myself any favors. But, we addressed it really well. I can remember A1Cs being, in the low 7s for most of my childhood and teenage years. Probably until I got about 16. And I think like all teenagers, that was when we started the I know life better than my parents do. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to sneak regular soda and Snickers and Milky Ways and self-destructive pretty much. So from the ages of 17 till 19, I actually put myself in the ER about 4 times, DKA, very hard-headed. And learn things the hard way from there. Now when I started getting a little older, things started becoming more controlled. There were a couple of periods in life where I was pretty much penniless and had to learn the hard way on how to manipulate insulin to get the best numbers. And pretty much the really big turning point for me was when my wife came to me and told me she was pregnant. And I kind of went, wow, all right, there's going to be another life, expecting me to be there to provide for them. I need to get my act together. Mm-hmm. And really, that was when the switch kind of flipped and I became very serious and a voracious reader of all things diabetes, a lot of online research. And it's what led me to work with some experts in the field. Me and Ginger Vieira have been friends and talked off and on for years. And I've worked with 2 biochemists on nutrition, especially as it relates to athletes and diabetes. I kind of found the gym along the way too, and it became, I was always pretty small. When I graduated high school, I weighed 117 pounds.
Wow.
And I weigh 215 now. So a little bit of a journey there. But as I got in the gym, I fell in love with it, and that became a passion. And as health and fitness becomes a passion, so do better numbers and better eating habits. And so that has kind of meshed together and become a driving force behind everything that I do now. I found powerlifting along the way too, and got into competing competitively, which has been a huge impact in running out of steam and running into diabetes burnout and things happens to all of us. But there was always another meet that I had planned. And so I didn't really have time to burn out, because if I burned out, that meant that my progress stopped. And so I think that that's a large force behind what kept me upbeat and going for all these years. And then getting into strongman, it's even more, because there's so many more things I have to be able to do. I have to, run with 200-pound sandbags and press logs over my head and deadlift cars and pick up round balls of concrete. And so it led me to be very active in how to manage sugars during these activities. And I thankfully have figured out something that works really well, and have been able to reproduce that in others quite often. And that's kind of, that was a little short, but that's kind of what's got me to this point today. And what I'm doing.
So from what you said, one of the things that I really loved was that basically what you're saying, and of course people experience burnout, depression, all kinds of different mood fluctuations, dealing with, a disease that is 24/7, 365 with no breaks. But just like anything in life, if you have something planned, if you have a goal coming up, like you said, another meet, you had another thing to do. And that's why, I'm a big fan of having a goal, because when you have something to look forward to, that you've set, that you've committed to, that you've decided, you've chosen that you're going to accomplish, when the going gets tough, you have that to keep you moving. You're like, well, I could just give up, but I've committed to X, Y, and Z, whether it be a 5K, could be a 1K fun walk, anything, whatever it might be, is that you have that thing that you've committed to. You've signed up for it. You have other people that know you're going to do it. And by having that goal there, it helps you stay on track, right? I mean, so I love that. I think that's something that anybody, whether there's someone like you and myself who are very into athletics, or someone like you and myself who, 10 years ago weren't very into athletics at all, that's a way to kind of get into it. Because I like you, when I was a teenager, I wasn't in the gym and I was eating really bad foods, and I didn't have goals set, and my numbers reflected the way that I was living. And I think that's a really good point that you brought up.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is, I've been watching your 7-day thing, just went completely blank. There you go. It's about putting value on your health. And one of the ways for me to put value on the health was to put value in a goal. And the time and the commitment and the results from that carry over to kind of all aspects of your life. And so, I encourage everybody to go out and just pick something, anything. And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's a fun walk, a 5K, a 10K, a triathlon, a powerlifting meet, a strongman comp, or even just a commitment to, in a year from now, I want to look in the mirror and see a better version of myself. And there's a pretty famous YouTuber out there. His name's Elliot Hulse, and he runs a channel called Strength Camp. And he's always talking about being the best version of yourself. And I love that. And I've used it for a long time, because I really like what the underlying message is it's don't compare yourself to anybody else, and you don't have to have the same goals and strive towards the same end objective as everybody else. But what you can do is you can decide what you want to do and what you want to be, and then you work towards that. And you're going to find that everything comes together. You know, your health comes together, your happiness, and it all just kind of works together like that.
Yes, I completely agree. And I teach this, and I say it because I've had this experience, this transformation experience in my own life. Is I couldn't agree with you more. It's basically just saying is that when you put your health as a top priority, whatever that means, whether that means you choose to eat healthier foods on a regular basis or get on a nutrition plan that you know is going to serve you better, or you go into the gym where you're not comparing yourself to other people. But what happens is when you start eating better and or when you start moving your body a different way, your mind changes about what you as a human being are capable of doing. Whereas before you were doing that, you didn't maybe believe that you could accomplish X, Y, and Z of a goal. But then when you started doing that, you're like, wait a minute, I can do this. And when you realize you can do it, then you think, well, what else can I do? And you become a different person. It's like, I can't, and I'm going to quote the wrong person, and I don't know exactly, but it's about money, but the same thing goes along with life. It's like becoming a millionaire isn't the prize of becoming a millionaire. It's the person you have to become to get to that point of, because becoming a millionaire, not that I know, but it takes a lot of work and self-discipline and the amount of drive that you have to put into your life every day. You have to change who you are as a person to get there, just like you had to change who the person you were to get to being, Rodney, eating, Snickers and all kinds of stuff like that, to Rodney, the strongman athlete lifting Atlas stones. And just like I had to do the same thing from having an eating disorder to teaching people how to live a healthy nutritional lifestyle, I had to become a different person, but it was an evolution into a better version, like an upgrade. Like I was version 1, now version 2, and I'm always upgrading, like just like Microsoft, it's like better versions, no more tech support for that old version because it's no good anymore. And we all have that ability. I like that. You're making me think here.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it. And that's why one of the things that I find so appealing about the diabetic online community is that we have all been there. We have all gone through some of these same struggles, and while your path is different than mine, we can identify the characteristics that we both went through and what those things changed into to become who we are now. If you approached me 10 years ago and said, Rodney, we're going to put you in a harness and you're going to pull a fire truck, I would have looked at you like you were dumb, really, really dumb, because there was no way that was going to happen. And now it's like, well, I pull a fire truck. I want to see if I can pull a dump truck.
I'm going to deadlift a car, whatever.
Exactly. And so, it's really important. And being an admin on the Diabetic Athletes Board, that's one of the main things that I try to put out there is that this is where you are at this point in your life. That's not where you're going to be at in 5 years from now. And so your A1Cs may be 8s and 9s now, but in 5 years from now, they can be 5s and 6s or 7s, because it's an improvement. And it just takes a conscious effort and, maybe a little bit of guidance. And that's kind of what we both try to do for people, is we try to help them find the path and then start journeying down it.
Yep, absolutely. One of the people that I, follow for business, his name is Brendan Burchard, and he just teaches people how to, his goal is to teach people how to be their best self, kind of like the guy that you mentioned, who I wrote down, who I will link to his Elite FTS site under the video. But he says, don't base your abilities on your current circumstances or competencies. That's one of his things that he says over and over again, because whatever your life could be, like, don't decide right now that this is what your life is going to be like forever just because you don't currently have the competency to, lift an Atlas stone. Doesn't mean that, like you said, or that you have an A1C of 10 or 9, that, next year that you won't have the ability to have a 6 or a 7. That's a mindset decision, and you can change your mindset. And when you change your mind about what is and is not possible, it trickles into, like you said, into every other part of your life, which I think is something that once each person experiences that for themselves, it's like almost like an awakening. It's like you're almost like you were asleep, and then you're just like, oh my goodness. And I think every single human being, has diabetes or not, has the ability to kind of awaken into the power that we all have to, spread love and joy. And, once we're happy with who we are, it just begins, you know, emanating out into other relationships, which I think probably is why we both chose a life of helping other people, because it's almost like you can't not. It's like it's a pull. It's a pull to, you know, spread that joy to other people, because you want other people to feel that amazing feeling of, you know, coming into their own strength, whatever that may be, whether it's physical or otherwise. So
yeah, exactly. You know, there's you know, when I did the car deadlift, it was for a 8A event, and it was a fundraiser for a particular group that was going to do the step out walk. And the boy was 14, and he'd been diagnosed within the last year, and he was really huge into baseball, really good baseball player. And he was having a really hard time coming to grips with it, and then how that was going to affect how he played baseball, you know, because at a 14-year-old boy, anything is possible. And then he was all of a sudden told this is no longer possible. And, you know, we got done, and he came up to me and he had me sign the red hand that the ADA uses, and I cried and I signed it because it was a very humbling experience. But, you know, he looked at me and he said, you know, if you can do this, I can play baseball. Like, this is way harder than playing baseball. And when that first happens as an advocate, you know, and I'm sure it's happened to you, and it's happened to everybody else out there that has any, you know, outreach system in place, you're going to have that one person that comes to you for the first time and says, you helped me see what I can do. And that right there, that's better than any powerlifting meet, any strongman comp, accomplishment or PR that I've ever hit in the gym. And you just go, this is what I have to do. Like, if this only ever happens to me one more time, this will be worth it.
Yep.
And this will complete my life as a human being.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's like, you know, it reminds me of, you know, one of my first clients that I ever had, who actually is still a client today, and probably the only one of two clients that I actually still see in person, because all I do now is online stuff. But, you know, I started seeing her when she was 16, and she was, you know, decided that her life was not, you know, actually I've interviewed her. Her name is Shay. She's on my interview series now, because she's about to graduate and be a nurse, because she decided that, and she wrote like a high school paper on why I was her like inspiration, and her mom shared it with me, and I was reading this paper like, oh my God. Like, I was a blubbering baby reading this like paper. And like, now she's working in a children's hospital, and I think LPN, but she's going to be a registered nurse now. She decided she wanted to help other people. And yeah, but like you said, like, that feeling is just, there's nothing out. It's like, there's nothing like it. And when you know that you have the ability to provide that for someone else, there's no turning back. I really don't think there is, at least not for me.
No, and that's one of the great things, you know, like you mentioned, I'm going to try to put together the Bolus and Barbells event, because there's a lot of diabetics out there that don't know other diabetics, that don't have in-person interactions with other diabetics. And while social media is great and we can talk on Facebook, there's something a lot more personal and more effective by getting face-to-face with somebody and seeing them and seeing their facial and their body language and everything like that happen. And so to get all of us together in a CrossFit gym, working out, checking our Dexcoms, eating our glucose tabs, you know, taking shots or putting in boluses in our pumps, you know, that's going to be a culmination of effort that I'm really, really looking forward to, because it's going to be, for me, it's going to be a magical experience, because growing up, I didn't know any diabetics, and there was no online community at that time. You know, and so we grew up without the support system built in. And so we had our parents and hopefully our doctors. Sometimes we don't have, sometimes we don't have that support system.
Sometimes.
And so we learned the hard way a lot of times, and we felt very disconnected from the rest of our classmates or our friends, our family members. And so now that we can all kind of come together in person, or at least online, and share these experiences and kind of grow together. You know, there's been lots of things that I've learned even after 28 years of dealing with this, by joining the online community and learning and seeing how different people interact and deal with this. So it's really an awesome thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to agree, you know, I started being active in the online community, I don't know, 5-ish, maybe 4 years ago. And then it just became kind of addictive, like you said, just interacting with people, because like same as you said, you're 32, I'm 33. So we grew up same time, you know, no internet, no diabetes online community. I didn't know anybody else with diabetes till I was late 20s, not even. And that was just like, you know, people that I'd meet, and I really didn't have like a super huge connection with them, and really began really connecting with people, like serious connections other than just like acquaintances, when I started interviewing people. But then, kind of like you said, I went out of my shell early last year and went to a conference, and it was the Diabetes Unconference, which is happening again in a couple of months, which I'm going to again, by the way, which I highly recommend everybody goes to, because it's not like a conference where, you know, there's all these doctors giving spiels about, you know, what you should and shouldn't be doing. It's a room full of people. You have to have diabetes to attend. You're not allowed to attend this conference unless you have diabetes. Actually, they have like a track this year where someone who loves diabetics, you know, if it's your husband, your wife, X, Y, and Z, but they're not going to be in the room with us. They're going to be in their own room. But it's a really super supportive community. And I met someone there, her name is Dr. Jody Stanislaw, who I actually just ended up rooming with, like totally randomly, who is now like my super best friend, like to the point where we talk like every week, we're texting like every day. Like she and I, it's just the connection that we had. And then there's Asha Brown, who's, you know, the founder of We Are Diabetes, who, you know, I met her after interviewing her, I met her in person at the Friends for Life Children with Diabetes conference in last July. And now we're like best friends. And just that connection that you have in person, although it's awesome, like you said, but it's like you have to go out of your shell. You have to be like, well, normally I wouldn't do this. And that's what happened to me with the conference. Normally I just talk to people online, but I'm like, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. Let me just go to this conference, and changed my life. So definitely step out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
And that's a big thing too. You know, we have some diabetics on the board that don't tell other people, and it's not known to their friends sometimes, even, or especially their work acquaintances, that they even are diabetic. You know, and it's not the shame thing, but it's like, you know, I don't want to talk about this because it's my thing, and, you know, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. And that was the mentality that I had for a long time. The first couple of years that I competed, nobody knew.
Wow.
I would go up and I would tell the meet promoter, hey, I'm a diabetic. If something happens, we've got it. You don't need to call the ambulance. You know, I'll go sit down and have some glucose tabs and I'll be absolutely fine. And strongman is a very niche community anyway, for some very obvious reasons. Who else wants to get together and lift normally heavy concrete balls? So when I started being more proactive, the support and outreach that I got from them has been absolutely amazing. And, you know, that's the other side of it, is we feel isolated from other diabetics because it's not a common disease. You know, unfortunately it is too common, but, you know, we're not always going to be surrounded by other diabetics, but then we're separated from everybody else because they don't know what it's like, and they will never know what it's like, thankfully, because they're not having to poke themselves in the finger or take a shot or have a pump constantly connected to them. But when we come out and we start being more open with it, it's great to see how supportive normal people are about us, and sometimes overcoming that mental hurdle to say, it's okay, I am a diabetic. This is who I am as a person. I do all these things, but I always am going to be a diabetic as well. And the amount of comfort that comes with kind of coming out of the shell in that aspect too is something that I really try to promote to people. Is, you know, you don't have to go around like broadcasting it wearing a shirt that says, I have the beatus and I can't eat cookies or something. You know, you don't have to do that, but, you know, let your friends know and explain to them, you know, this is what I deal with. And it can be very freeing because it's no longer you by yourself.
Yep. I actually
circle.
have to super agree with you. I had a very similar experience. I mean, I've been working out steadily for about 8 years now, but I actually joined CrossFit about a year and a half ago. And it was a very big step for me, even though a year and a half ago I was, all my friends knew that I had diabetes and I was, I wasn't hiding it, but I had also just been very accustomed to working out by myself, doing my own thing. And then the thought of joining a giant group of, kind of elite-ish athletes, because, joining CrossFit, not everybody's elite. And that's another thing I want to tell people. It's like, just because you join CrossFit, you don't have to be. I don't think I'm an elite athlete. And there's most of the women at my box are doing, way more. I'm not RXing, I'm not doing the prescribed ways. Point being, I walked in, I told the coach, it's like, hey, I have diabetes. It's completely under control. I have glucose with me at all times. And he goes, oh, we have another person here that has diabetes. Look, we have glucose over here. He's like, anything you need, this, that, and the other thing. And like people, and like I wear my Dexcom on my arm. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like, so people would see it. People would ask me about it. There's another guy at my box that has diabetes. I never really get to see him because we go at different times. But the point is that everybody was cool. And like, if I ever like looked weird or anything, I'd be like, do you need anything? Like, people are super supportive. They weren't like weirded out about it. In fact, I had people coming up to me asking me stuff like, well, how do you manage that? Like, what's your system? Like, because a lot of people in the gym are like, they know a lot about health and fitness, and they want to like, well, what are your blood sugars before? Like, people aren't like, they're not being rude. They're like genuinely interested in like, they think you're a badass because you're doing this with diabetes, and guess what? You are. So it's like, but these are people that don't have diabetes, but they like all welcome me, and they're all super supportive, and they're all like totally cool with it, and they don't think I'm weird. So I totally agree with you. Not for having diabetes, at least.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody that knows me thinks I'm odd, and that's one of the things. I don't do CrossFit, but I have a huge appreciation for CrossFit, and especially the community aspect of CrossFit. And I was in Oklahoma City visiting family over the holidays, and ended up dropping into a CrossFit gym up there. And I'm talking to the coach, and he's like, yeah, da 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 da. And I was changing shirts, and he saw my Dexcom on my abdomen, and he goes, what's that? And I said, oh, I'm a diabetic. And he goes, really? He goes, you're really big for a diabetic. And I went, wait a minute, is he calling me fat, or is he saying I'm in shape? But his idea of a diabetic was not me.
Yeah,
not who I am and what I do. And so it was a learning experience for him, because he didn't have anybody in his box that was a diabetic. And so, that kind of broke the stereotype that we see a lot of times, that diabetics are obese and we eat poorly and blah, blah, blah. And so he looked at me and he goes, wow, you're a big dude. You obviously have been training a long time, and you're a diabetic. Like, I have no excuses now. I'm going to go out and kill this wad because you're doing it and you don't even have a pancreas. So, it's really cool. And, that's what Strongman has done for me. And CrossFit's really, one of my best friends is Hillary Emmons, who is phenomenally in shape.
Yeah, I'd like to interview her. So if we post this in the Hillary, you're up next.
I will send her your direction. And Hillary is amazing, and I'm jealous. I wished I had her butt, because mine is really cool. So round.
I'm gonna tell you right now, she's got a really nice butt, but if it was on your body, it just wouldn't work.
It wouldn't look right. No, I understand. So I can still be jealous of it, though, because it's amazing, and she's in amazing shape, and she has an amazing control of her sugars. She's a coach at her CrossFit gym as well. And so, to see that and see what she can do, and then all of her, members see that and they go, well, she can do it. I obviously can do it. And so, I'm always real big on trying to put things in the most positive light. Mm-hmm. And so, when I talk to people and everything, and when I coach non-diabetics, when I do their exercise programming and stuff like that, generally it's for strength sports, powerlifting and strongman. I've had some tough love with them a couple times. I've been like, well, I do this and I don't have a pancreas, so you're going to do this and you're going to do it even better than I can. It's kind of my go-to to spur them on a little bit.
Yeah, and it is. And I think the whole, what you said about we have the opportunity to educate people, because that's one of the things that I don't get angry, but it's the thing is that there are so many stereotypes about people with diabetes, which obviously you go into a box, and a CrossFit coach, I think has a lot of knowledge about the human body and wellness, and they're still thinking that there's a look for what diabetes looks like, and there's not. There's no look for diabetes. Like, everybody who has diabetes looks completely different body types, different ages and heights and weights and all this other stuff. So we have this ability to educate other people in a kind way, like not in a, not like, you idiot, that's not what I mean, because I'm a very positive person too, but it's like, no, I understand that you might have thought that people with diabetes look a certain way, but just so you know, for the future, diabetes doesn't have a look. And now you don't have to ever look stupid in front of a person with diabetes. But no, you don't say that. But my point is that we have this really great opportunity to educate people when we come into a group setting. And most people, the majority of people, especially people who are out there working on their physical bodies because they care about their well-being, they're open to being educated. And they're like sponges. They want this knowledge. And so when we pass on the knowledge, we give it to them. And then they can pass on this knowledge to other people, which is how we slowly break stereotypes. So, yeah. Yeah.
And it's really funny too, is, I've had a couple of guys ask me about, well, how do you do your insulin dosages, during before, during, and after a workout? And, a lot of times, there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to fitness and nutrition as it stands. And so, my favorite is to tell them about how much less insulin I have to take post-workout than before, and how that proves the anabolic window is not 5 minutes after you get done training. You don't have to knock people down to get to your protein shake. How you can go home and have, a plate of chicken and some rice, or, whatever you do, sweet potato, post-workout, and that still is going to be an effective way to recover and recuperate so that you can train at full capacity the next day. And when I can break it down to them in that way, eyes get this big and they go, wow, you've spent a lot of time. And I'm like, well, I see it firsthand because I have to give those dosages of insulin. And so I know what spikes insulin and I know what doesn't, and I know how to get the most out of those types of situations. Taking whey hydroslate, which is a very reformed whey protein. And I didn't know this either, but apparently they give that intravenously in patients in the hospital.
Wow.
Pure whey hydroslate, because it is so close to being an individual chain of amino acids that it takes very little for it to be broken down. And this is like in muscle wasting diseases, sometimes in AIDS and cancer and things like that. So taking stuff like that for a diabetic, I have to take a large amount of insulin because it converts so rapidly. And so I do that for non-diabetic clients. Especially we're trying to cut weight or something, we can give whey hydroslate post-workout, and we still get the insulin spike, which starts the repair process for them, but we're not having to eat a ton of carbs as well.
Yeah.
And so, it's all about manipulating your systems, and using that to teach people about diabetes is kind of my thing, I guess you could say.
It's an amazing teaching tool. Now I know that when I train with you, I'm going to be shooting up whey hydroslate into my veins. Now
just get it directly in there. Just mainline it.
Just kidding. No,
I'm going to do the training video, and I'm just going to have an IV in me the whole time.
This is how Rodney preps for a competition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So that's amazing. You're giving so much good stuff here. And as I always say to people when I talk to them about diabetes, especially nutrition kind of nerds like we both have realized that we are. Hence, Rodney and I actually had a 30-minute pre-interview conversation because we just couldn't stop talking about nutrition and insulin and all kinds of stuff. But we have to make this interview watchable for people who actually have other things to do in their lives. So let's bring it up to over all these years of your experience. What have you decided for you? What are Rodney's top 3 tips for thriving with diabetes?
The top 3 tips. There's a lot of tips. To get it to 3, I would have to say the number one, first and foremost important one is to realize that your numbers today do not dictate what kind of diabetic you are. And that comes down to, we all have bad days. We all have days where our blood sugars don't coincide with what we expect to happen. And so don't beat yourself up about it. Just realize that this is where I am today, and this is what I need to do to make tomorrow a better set of numbers. There's no negativity, should not be anywhere in that. Number 2 is to learn everything you can, and not just about diabetes, but in how the human body works as a whole. Because just because we have one organ that doesn't function doesn't mean that we're not going to have other organs that don't function properly either. And so, thyroid is a big thing that diabetics struggle with. Any sort of endocrine system, adrenal glands and stuff like that. So don't just limit yourself to diabetes research. Get a basis of understanding for how the whole human body works. And that will make managing diabetes easier, because now you're treating all of your body instead of just one organ. And that one's hard. That one, seek out help in that one. Your doctor should be able to help you explain some of the endocrine systems, and, people like yourself who, keep a YouTube channel and put out daily content and stuff, because that's what you're trying to get people to understand. Like you said, drink lots of water as on your day 1. And, that's vital. It may not be vital to your pancreas working properly, but it's vital to all the other systems in the body.
And I think just to add to that, like for me, I didn't know a ton about the human body, like the way everything functions. I went to personal training school, which was a 6-month program, 500 hours in a classroom. Then we took from the classroom and went directly into the gym and applied it. But we had to learn all of the anatomy and physiology. We had to learn, all of the muscles, the insertions, the joint actions. And so even if you're not going to go to personal training school, which you don't have to, but you could just go to Barnes and Noble and grab like an anatomy and physiology book. It is so fascinating. Like I have my anatomy and physiology book from personal training school from like 2009. It's sitting on my coffee table still because I love that book. It is so cool. It's just and I find that the more I know about the way the human body works, the more empowered I feel about the decisions that I make, because I know more about what I'm making a decision about, and it doesn't have to be diabetes related. So I totally agree with that one.
Exactly. And that's, so then you walk into your doctor's office as more of an equal, instead of his level of education is here and you're down here not understanding half of what he's talking about, or she. And the third tip is find some sort of activity, physical activity, that if you don't have to love it, but you can at least tolerate it and do it. I grew up as a farm kid, ranch work my whole life, and then I went into working in an office setting, and that was when I started having just issue upon issue upon issue, and that's what eventually pushed me back into the gym. And once that happened, once I got back in the gym, all those issues went away. The human body is meant to move. Yep. We're not supposed to have calluses on our butts, even though we sit, unfortunately, an insane amount of time in the day. And so get off your rumpus and do something. Like I said, you don't have to love it, but at least be able to tolerate it enough to do it. And you will find much easier control of your diabetes. You will find a much easier mental state, and you'll just be overall a healthier, harder to kill person.
I totally agree with all of that you just said. And, just don't believe that if you don't like exercise now that you can never like it. It's never too late. Like I said, I didn't start exercising until I was in my 20s. And, I always use my mom as an example, who I love her. Thank you, Mom, for always allowing me to use you as an example. But, she was never an athletic person. She started being like really athletic when she was like 60. She's now 64. She hikes all the time. She does yoga like 3 times a week. Like she's just like in a super big habit of exercise now that she didn't really get into until she was like 60. So it's never too late to start the habit of enjoying physical movement. So I totally agree. Totally agree with all that stuff you said. So is there anything else that you would like to add before we kind of close it up here?
No, I really appreciate you having me on here. It's great to talk with other people in the diabetic community and to, you know, talk to kind of the whole community at large and share, you know, my thoughts and everything. And if nothing else, you can look at it and go, you know what, if this dum-dum can do it, I can do it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. You're not a dum-dum. Rodney is going to give me links to any way that he wants you to be able to contact him. As usual, under my videos, I will have all the contact information. So any way Rodney wants you to get in touch with him, you will be able to. I'll also list the websites. I actually wrote them down that he mentioned in case you want to go look at those websites that he mentioned. And as usual, thank you for watching. Give us a little thumbs up if you enjoyed this. And we will see you on the next episode of Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator. Take it easy, guys.